You're on the Bible Forum. It's July 8, 2018. Do you know why the suicide rate is increasing? Apparently, there has been an alarming rise of suicide since 1999. One professor of psychology at North Dakota State University wants to know why. Clay Routledge is now arguing that the suicide crisis in the United States is part of a crisis of meaning. The increasing detachment and weaker sense of belonging is increasing our existential despair. Now that's fancy talk for too much time with technology and not enough time with family and an increasing detachment from God. Published in the New York Times, Routledge is arguing all this is part of a crisis of meaning. The greater detachment and weaker sense of belonging is increasing our existential despair. Most people are seeking mental treatment of all sorts. The treatments are increasingly more available, yet the depression and anxiety is only getting worse. And consequently, so are the suicides. Suicide is generally what happens when people lose hope. When they see there is no other choice, or they realize, rightly or wrongly, that nothing's going to change, or that no one really cares. Large percentage of people who commit suicide believe with their whole heart that the world would be a better place without them, and that no one probably is going to miss them except maybe their mother. But you say, I care. Yeah, but you won't help. I would help. No, you're not me, and you don't know me. So you would want to help, but you wouldn't. And since everybody's going to die sometime, why not now? Because there's clearly no point to the life that I'm leading. And in that statement, they're probably right. There is no point to the life you're leading. So change the life you're leading to include an important point, not just change it for another useless, wasted time. But the sufficiently discouraged, sufficiently depressed don't see things this way. That's why they're depressed. It's kind of a cycle here. They have pursued a lifestyle, a value system, a philosophy that doesn't work. And they've reached a point where they now know it doesn't work. They don't know what does. They don't know it's their lifestyle that's the problem. But they know it, whatever it is, isn't working. And clearly it's not about them. It's what's being done to them. In some cases they might think, yeah, well, I made my choices. And if you make wrong choices, shouldn't you try to fix it? Yeah, they've tried. Well, they've tried all they know. Or they've tried all they want to try or willing to try. It doesn't occur to them that what they've established as a life's orientation or as a lifestyle is the problem. Now, some of this is just pure selfism. Some is conditioning. Most of it's a focus on self to the exclusion of reality. There are a number of variations, not all of which are the direct result or the direct fault of the one who has lost the hope. But in the final analysis, nobody can fix you. The key is finding someone you trust who isn't like you. Someone who is able to make it, doesn't fall into this hole like you have. and listen to them. Why is it they're not depressed by the hopelessness of life as you are? Well, in large part because they don't see the hopelessness as clearly as you. The world they live in is the same as yours, but it's different. They have a physical body that gets sick. They have a physical body that's damaged on occasion or tired or doesn't function the way it should. And there are chemical problems. They have relationships that don't work or are destructive. They have the same financial pressures, the same emotional issues, and the list goes on. And you say, well, how do you know all that? Well, because they're human. And the human experience is the same for everybody. Humans experience life the same way. They're human. The depressed individual, the desperate individual doesn't believe anybody has ever felt the way they do or has had to put up with what they've had to put up with. Nobody can possibly understand what I've been through or what I'm going through. No one has had to deal with what I've had or been hurt as deeply. Are you starting to see it? Yeah, it's all about them. Now, some of that's personality. And that personality was something they were born with. Depression is often found in families. It's a genetic thing. But being depressed is not always the reason for suicidal thoughts. The depressive personality is very often a realist. They know it won't work. So when it doesn't work, they say, see, I was right. Now that's a far cry from the, it's all about me, I can't win, let's end it all. The increase in suicides may simply be the change in society, a greater detachment. Think technology. I got 400 friends on Facebook. How many of them can you count on? If you suddenly went off Facebook, how many of them would call you up, write you a letter? Oh, wait a minute. They don't know what your phone number is. Probably don't even know where you live. Oh, I know the town. They don't have your address. But they're your friends. No, they're not. It's fake. Whose problem is this? Who was it substituted real people for pictures? Didn't go out of the house but had all these friends. And what made you think they had the time or the energy to truly care about you? Caring in the sense of stepping up to help you if you had a need. Stepping up to help you with more than just words and pictures on a screen. Happy, happy, happy. How many people, mostly women, substitute Facebook or whatever for real friends? You know, the ones who are there for you when you need them. People like in your neighborhood, not halfway around the globe. And what about those friends of yours, the ones you believe care about you? You'd probably do anything for them. Will they reciprocate? Probably not, at least in the way you do. So why do you do what you do for them? Well, you know, it's all about paying dues. I do for them so they'll do for me. Or it's about giving, expecting nothing in return. The first one of those definitions or conclusions is destructive. The second is not only helpful, it's godly. Giving, expecting nothing in return, is a Bible principle. It's the essence of love. And there you are. Is God an intricate part of your life or simply the genie you rub when you need something? We're all spiritual beings. The flesh is not all there is to me or to you. When we start looking for meaning, it's instructive where we look. And if we look to others to find meaning, what do we usually find? When life no longer seems to work, the average person turns to substitutes. It might be food or alcohol, sex, drugs, sports, or just busyness. And none of those are satisfying the real need or satisfying it in the real sense. Because your true need is not physical. It's not mental. It's not social. You have exercised all of those and it didn't work. You're a spiritual being, meaning the real you is not physical. And you know it. When you look to the physical for satisfaction, does it really satisfy? No. You sit and you eat that candy until you're fat and you got diabetes. Didn't work. It doesn't work on any level, not consistently, and not for long. It's often akin to banging your head against a rock, and it just causes more despair. Sex is not satisfying in the long run. Drugs are not satisfying in the long run. Busyness is not satisfying in the long run. Sooner or later, everybody has to come back to reality. You know, that thing you hate the most? That thing that works you so hard for so little gain? That thing no one really appreciates in the long term? That thing that doesn't pay you back the way you thought it would? When you look for meaning, where are you looking? For women, it's very often in relationships. But the relationships they want are with men. And for men, meaning is very often in accomplishment. Or if it has to do with women, in conquering. But all of it is oriented toward personal satisfaction and joy. And when they don't produce what we want, we're just discouraged again. And being discouraged enough or in enough ways, we get depressed. And being depressed, nothing appears the way it really is. Everything is filtered through the pain. And soon the pain is overwhelming. I told you at the outset, the Bible's definition of love is giving, expecting nothing in return. That lesson is built into our DNA. For nothing produces the satisfaction we want or need better than giving to others. And nothing can produce the level of pain that process yields. Is it hopeless? I mean, is that what God is trying to tell me? No. The lesson is, in this world, nothing is right, good, or godly. In this world. Not the people, not the things they do, not the way it makes us feel. So change things. You be the person in your family or in your friend's life that matters. You be the illustration of love, giving, expecting nothing in return. And do it not for reward, not for recognition, but simply out of the pure pleasure of meeting somebody else's need in a way you know it needs to be met. In your marriage, who is it that's responsible for a good marriage? You, the one who wants it, the one who realizes that it isn't there and we need to do it. You can't change that other person. You can't make them be what you want. But you can change you. Now, you don't know my husband. You don't know my wife. I don't have to. I know the God who is in me, both to will and to do that which glorifies, meaning what makes God look good. I'm not responsible for how you respond to my love. I'm only responsible to love. If my marriage is not rewarding, then I need to change what I'm doing. If I can't change that, then change how I feel about it, how I handle it. Some people are just very hard to get along with. But your commitment is to love them, giving, expecting nothing in return. Yeah, well, I'm getting nothing. You don't expect anything. You married that person, didn't you? Nobody made you do it. What were you thinking? And what changed? What usually changes is I get to know them. I get to know this guy, this gal, Oh, so you rushed into this marriage without knowing all you needed to know. Whose fault's that? And what did God tell you about that? God says marriage as an estate is honorable. Literally subjectively valuable, objectively costly. But whoremongers, that's male prostitutes, and adulterers, both physically and spiritually, God will judge. And Jesus said if we divorce our mates and marry another, it's called adultery. It's a sin, big time. Now in the Bible, the context is when a woman does it, but it works both ways. And I can get out of this relationship if my partner is guilty of adultery. God lumps adultery in with the works of the flesh. Galatians 5. He says it's the same as murder. James chapter 2. It's a violation of God's established order. If the person you loved the way God loves you committed adultery, what would change? Your love for them? No. You're starting to get the point. Life is about responsibility. Whatever it is about life that has you to the point of despair is the product of your rebellion against God. It's natural. It's part of your DNA. But the Bible says left to itself, it produces death, spiritual death, and very often physical. The psychologist points to anxieties which discourage and depress. But what is an anxiety? It's a conflict of being. It's the fear of the unknown. It's worry over what may happen. It's hopelessness. The psychologist tells us these sorts of things often lead to drugs, alcohol, depression, and suicide. Why? Because we feel we no longer have any meaning to our life. It isn't that we don't have meaning, we just feel that we don't. Because those who have meaning are ones that are best able to cope with loss and trauma, and I can't. So is your life meaningful? Is your life meaningful to your mother? Is your life meaningful to your child? To your mate, to your friend? Is your life meaningful to that neighbor who lives a lonely existence just 2 doors from you? Is your life meaningful to that neighborhood child who doesn't know a mother's love? To that coworker who reveals his loneliness and fear Is your life meaningful to the multitudes who are living and dying without spiritual hope? Look at the people living on the street in your town. Can you offer them a little hope? Their physical need is well beyond your ability to repair, but a cup of cold water in a time of need? Do you know the value of a smile offered a stranger? You lack hope? Go get a job as a Walmart greeter. I'll guarantee you'll feel better. Take every opportunity to bring a little joy into somebody's life. Smile. A friendly greeting, a helping hand, a little time, just talking. The psychologist writes about the changing landscape in the United States that is undermining people's sense of meaning. The decline of neighborliness, the shrinking of the family, the diminishing of religion are all posing serious threats to a meaning of life, he says. He points out how Americans today are less likely to know and interact with their neighbors, that they are less likely to believe people are generally trustworthy and to feel they have individuals they can confide in. And then there's the families that are becoming smaller. People are marrying later, having fewer children, meaning fewer brothers and sisters, but also fewer uncles and aunties and cousins to connect with and be supported by. All this while adults with children are more focused on matters of meaning than childless adults. While parents experience a greater sense of meaningfulness when they are engaged in activities that involve taking care of children. Finally, the institutional and social scaffolding for a meaningful life that religion brings is also coming apart. More Americans, particularly young Americans, are less likely to identify with a religious faith, attend church, or engage in any religious practices. In so many areas of life, the traditional ways of providing meaning to people's lives are disappearing, and in their place, we just have this rancorous political division. Routledge points out that there are studies showing when presented with existentially threatening ideas, such as reminders of their mortality, the tendency is to revert to their own worldview bias. The fractious political debate isn't helping. The debate is as fractious as it has ever been. It's not simply political. It's not simply an ideological disagreement. It's more visceral, more personal, more in-your-face destructive. So have Americans swapped family, neighborliness, and religion for political rallies and ideological debate? And how's that impacted our sense of worth or purpose? We are moving toward an ever meaningless existence, meaningless in the sense of things eternally important, and the enemy is on the move. His time is short, and he knows it. The result? Suicides are on the rise. You see, Satan is a murderer and a deceiver. He kills his own. Don't let him get to you. Be smarter than that.